Okay, so I had not so many King's Gambit games, to be honest, but yeah, it's okay. I also don't use, so it's just I will upload to YouTube and that's it. Okay, so first game is against Mark Esserman, quite famous for attacking openings, like Mora Gambit and also King's Gambit. So this game was played very recently. So he's obviously a big specialist. He's so his moves probably are like close to what white should play normally. So bishop c4, knight f6. So yeah, this is the main thing of this Cunningham variation, that black wants to give this check on h4, and if the king should move in front of the bishop and block its way, then it's very good to give that check. But if the bishop moves to c4 like he did, then bishop h4 is not that great, because there is simply king f1 and the king is not so bad on f1. Bishop will have to eventually retreat, and then king f2, bringing the rook out, is already pretty good for white. So yeah, this check is not so good, and unfortunately the knight cannot really develop because the bishop would hang. So this check is not that good here. So here knight f6 is the recommendation, attacking the pawn on e5, e4. So he went e5, and I go knight e4. This is the point, and now if given the chance, black wants to play d5 in the next move. And if d5 is managed without problems, then white doesn't have space advantage in the center anymore. Black can also play g5 just to simply protect the pawn. So what he did is, definitely not the most common move, but it just shows that he knows these positions very well. He played bishop d5. He spent some time, I remember, and he played bishop d5 to stop pawn to d5. Okay, went knight to g5, d4, d6. This is one of the lines of the course, and basically after bishop f4, d takes e5, black, I believe, already solved all the problems in the opening, because obviously there are a lot of moves I would like to play here, but the problem is, yes, blitz game, yes. So the problem is that the d5 bishop is hanging. So basically the only move is to take back with the pawn, and then I play c6. And this basically already forces some trades, and black has the better pawn structure. So he went knight takes g5, which is actually incorrect. He should play bishop g5. That's the main line. And okay, here black can, I believe, just take on g5, or yeah, most likely black just takes. Also queen d5 is fine. So yeah, but I believe the line is bishop g5, and then okay, bishop moves somewhere, queen trade, and black is slightly better. So, but he went knight g5, which is actually worse, because I could have won a tempo here. So I don't have to take on g5 because it's not a bishop, so I can just take on d5 with the pawn, and the knight is under attack. So I win a huge tempo, and I can use this for development like knight c6 or queen b6 at some moment can be unpleasant with the usual problems in the diagonal. So yeah, this is what I should have played. I mean, I just looked at some line, like if he goes back, I go knight c6, and let's say he goes a short castle, then already queen b6 is a big problem, and I can just take this pawn on b2 without any problems. So it would have been better. I took with the queen, saying that the endgame is very good, and it is good, but the other continuation was even better. So knight c6, knight c3. I played bishop b4, and by playing long castle, he allowed me to have a nice advantage by taking and playing bishop e6. So here black is obviously better because white's pawns are in many islands, and later I could play like rook c8, knight a5. Just attack the pawns, and eventually I won this game. What he should have done is to play bishop d2, and yeah, this position is probably more or less okay for white. Black, I would say, slightly better, but because I mean the e5 pawn is quite weak, but okay, d pawn is also not that strong, so probably it should have been around equal. So that's the improvement here, to take with the pawn and basically just gain a tempo on the knight. Right, so moving on to the next game. So bishop c4, knight f6, knight e4. So here my opponent played queen e2, which is, I believe, the most common move online, and it's extremely, logical. I mean, the knight just jumped there and to attack it, but it's already almost lost for white after d5. So it gains a huge tempo on the bishop and opens up the diagonal for the c8 bishop. So it's really a big problem. I mean, if white doesn't take now on d6, then black has one more free move. So he decided to take. Now black has to take back with the knight, but the problem is that now the bishop is under attack, and white doesn't really want to give up this strong bishop. So he went bishop b3. I castled, castle, knight c6. So just, the center completely disappeared, and black has an extra pawn. He went d4, and okay, here kind of important move, which, once you know that it's very safe, it's not that difficult to make, so it's just g5. And that is true that it expands a little bit, the structure in front of the king, but yeah, there are simply no pieces to really attack the king, and black just wants to play like king g7, bishop to f5, bishop to f6, and these pawns are like perfectly blocking white's way to get any sort of attack. So the game went like c3, bishop b5, knight d2, bishop f6. He went knight to c4. I traded. This was all fine, and here I went king to g7, which is probably not that good. I could have just played queen to d6. It was a better move. The idea is simply to bring the rook to e8, and for example, a nice variation. White cannot really do anything here, so the only idea is to play g3, and in this case, black can just play rook to e8, and after queen to g2, finally this idea which you are asking, I can use with king to h8. So yeah, this is also of course a typical idea in the king's gambit, just to move the king away, and actually it will be black who will have eventually attacking chances if white would ever decide to take on f4. So yes, this is a good plan, and this is how the game should have gone here. But in any case, I just got a big advantage from the opening and didn't really have to do much here. All right, so next game. So here my opponent goes d4, he's not moving the bishop to c4. It means that the king doesn't have comfortable square, so now the check is quite good. So king to f1 is not available, so the king either blocks the bishop or goes to d2 and blocks the other bishop, so not a very good choice. Of course, white can also take, but then the queen is coming with a check, also not good. So my opponent went king e2, and I played d5. So that's the whole point, basically. And here he went e5, trying to keep the center closed, and I went bishop g4, bishop f4. So yeah, this kind of position can be like reached pretty easily, I would say. And you know, the main thing of the king's gambit is to sacrifice a pawn for some attack. And here basically the material is equal, so white managed to win back the material, but the king is in the middle, so it's basically black who is going to attack for free. And okay, what I did here was not the best or nothing at all. I mean, I played c5. It's normal, but there is a break which is much would have been much better, and also to bring out some pieces would have been better. So I simply should have played knight e7 in this position. No, king's gambit is not refuted, I wouldn't say so. I mean, refuted would mean that it's not playable. It's certainly playable. So it's another thing that if black, I mean, it's not played often, obviously, because if black knows the opening, then there is not much to hope for with white, but as an advantage. But again, that doesn't mean it's not playable. So knight e7, plan is to go knight g6 and then f6. So white goes g3, and okay, this is just an illustrative line. Knight to g6, attacking bishop on f4. Bishop moves away, and there are many lines in the course similar to this, when okay, black just doesn't care about the piece that much. Obviously, the bishop could easily go back to e7, could easily go back to g5 because of the pin, but it is even better just to play f6. So just to open up the f file, this piece doesn't really matter. I mean, f file is opening for the rook. So g takes, f takes. Short castle is the threat, e4 is a threat, knight takes h4 is a threat. So a lot of problems for black, and it really doesn't matter that black is down a piece with such attack. So for example, if rook g1, then can just take queen h4. I mean, short castle is coming, queen h2 is coming. It's not looking good for white. And in case of king d2, knight takes h4, bishop e2, take, short castle, bishop e2, ed, and okay, white doesn't really have time to finish development. Always there is some sort of an attack. Black has 2 pawns for the piece, and I mean, king is horribly weak, knight cannot come out, this is hanging, so yeah. Okay, again, this is just an illustrative line, but just how it could go. Actually, the game was also kind of nice in a way. So I went c5, c3, knight c6. Okay, neither of us necessarily playing the best moves. This dc probably is really not good. So queen e7, b4, long castle. So white is up a pawn, but you know, black can just sacrifice a lot of things, and with this knight d4 basically just break the position, since because of the pin on the queen, the knight cannot take, so it's already like super bad. Okay, so moving on to the next game, which was again really bad opening from white. So bishop e7, he also went d4, but on bishop h4, I mean, the king should move. So at least that's something white should do. My opponent played g3. I mean, it's really like king's gambit move, sacrificing one more pawn, but unfortunately, it's a little bit too much. So he went bishop g2, and I took one more pawn. So he went king f1, and I just retreated with the bishop. I mean, there is nothing left from white's king side. And why would it be like any realistic hope for white to attack this king on e8 with like g2 bishop and so on? Like, it just seems like two extra pawns. My opponent played bishop f4, I played d5. I mean, that's the move that black should play at some moment. I mean, here it was not even that important. Even d6 is good. Just to open the bishop, develop the knight, and two pawns up, basically. So d5, e5, and yeah, here I shouldn't have done anything really. So this c5 is very unnecessary move. The game even get later complicated because of it. I mean, it's still good here, but just so unnecessary because, I mean, the game is already like sort of blocked on the queen side and the center, so black can just, for example, play g5. And once the bishop takes on h2, the knight simply develops to h6. And black's idea is very simple. Put the knight on f5, then the bishop to e6, and just basically push the pawns on the king side. And I mean, two extra pawns for black after 10 moves, and white's king is much weaker. So this would have been pretty easy if I find this move. I did not, but yeah, the game got very messy since I missed it. Okay, so bishop c4, knight f6. It's similar, I mean, in a way that now queen check. I mean, it's possible there is a line like this, but again, if the king can just go to f1 and knight to f3 with a tempo, then it's not really good to give the check. So knight f6, e5, and the typical move here was just very good again to play d5. Attack the bishop, open the c8 bishop, and have some space. So my opponent went bishop b3, now I go knight e4. Have the threat of queen h4, knight to f3, and I played bishop g4, which is fine. It was also possible to go like g5 and just to hold on to this pawn. I went bishop g4, and my opponent went d3, and here I did a mistake, or I mean, it's not really a mistake. Again, I just played, instead of playing, much better moves, I just played what looked like easy, and even that way it was better for black. So it says quite a lot about this this line for white. It's not really good. But of course, I had the possibility to take on f3, and yeah, this is something with the knight on e4 I should not have missed. So now queen h4 check. Basically, king can move to a few squares, but in all of them, knight g3 or knight f2 is possible. So yeah, that would have been good. And if he plays g3 now, of course, knight g3 is not good anymore. because the rook is protected by the queen. But now I can take with the pawn. And white doesn't have time to take my knight because I give discover check, take the rook and win the game. So h takes, and okay, here attacking the rook, and yeah, black is just a pawn up in this endgame, and it should be much better. I went knight c5, there were one more interesting moment in this game, so yeah, I just played normal, and okay, this bishop is really misplaced on b3, knight is also not particularly good, so castle a5, he went d4, and yeah, this was kind of a unusual moment, I would say, because I took on b3, which, I mean, in general, it's not too bad to take that bishop, like to get the bishop pair, light squares are very good after that, and so on. But I just could have played knight e6, which finishes the game right away. Since the bishop is under attack, it has to go away, and a4 is the threat of trapping the bishop. So it would have immediately won a piece for me. But okay, not much later I won the game anyway, but okay, this is just a piece like this. Next game I played against Nepomniachtchi. This is the only game I lost, but okay, it's not too important. I mean, it just again, I believe more important in the sense that okay, he did a course for the King's Gambit. He obviously knows few things about it, and so it's just interesting to see how he tries to play against the Cunningham defense. So he goes bishop c4, knight f6, e5, knight e4, knight c3. So this is the line he tried. And yeah, there are a couple of tricks here maybe for white. That's why he tried this. And I immediately, sort of spoiled the game because I took on c3. This is just not good. This is not how black should play. But as usual, when the knight is under attack in some way, even in this way, the correct move is to play d5. And that is the course as well. Yeah, and here, okay, the main line goes like bishop takes d5. I mean, this is objectively the move what white should play, but it's really sad in some sense because, okay, for example, bishop h4 check, king f1, knight c3. Now pawn has to take because the bishop is hanging, and black just plays c6. And basically white has no way to keep this bishop because the queen is not protected. So knight takes h4, cd, knight f3, knight c6, say bishop f4, short castle. This is one possible line where, I mean, it's obvious that white has no attack whatsoever. It rather will be white who gets some sort of an attack, get under attack. So queen b6, bishop f5, bishop e4 will be played, and yeah, black is slightly better at least in this position. So I guess my opponent wanted to play knight to d5 most likely. This is more tricky. Now bishop h4 check, king f1, knight f2. So it looks like very good for black, but there is one move to know in this position, because if I would be too greedy and immediately take the rook, then queen h4 happens. And here it's much better position actually for white, because okay, if I would trade queens, then the c7 pawn can be a problem, and also the knight is in a danger. So Yeah, so this position is not so good. So there is one move to know, and obviously I didn't know this move, and most likely I would not find it in this blitz game if I reach this position, which I also did not manage to. So there is this nice move, bishop to e6, which pretty much refutes this line from white. Obviously now the point is quite simple, that black is waiting. I mean, white has to do something. White has a knight hanging, white has a rook under attack. So the logical move is knight takes h4, but now black only takes on h1. So instead of the queen coming to h4, it's now the knight, which, by the way, also can be a big problem. And there is this pin on the knight on d5, which actually cannot be solved. So the knight cannot get protected here. And if it moves away, the bishop is lost. Only way would be to protect with the queen, but then obviously the other knight is falling. So that's why this very strong move, bishop e6, is pretty much refuting the line. So, okay, the game itself is not so important after that. I mean, it was equal, and okay, I lost at the end. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, so theoretically speaking, the line he chose is absolutely harmless for black. Okay, so this is, I believe, the last game which I have, and this is against Ilyas Mirin, also very strong grandmaster, used to be over 2700. So he also goes for this bishop c4, which is simply not a good line. So now I play d5, I play c6, and we get into this funny structure. So black has an extra pawn, will castle in the next move, and again, it's a very good question what white has for it. I don't think that's a lot of things. So knight f3. Here the engine already suggests to give this check on e7, because either the king moves or queen trade, which both are very good for black. I castled, also cannot be too bad castle. Knight to c6. And here he played knight c3, attacking my pawn. And then I went d4. He went knight e2 and d3. So this was pretty good, because after knight f4, okay, here I made a mistake. dc2 is absolutely not needed. I could have just played bishop f5, which again a little bit looks like a king's gambit reversed, because it's rather black who is attacking with, I mean, not even down a pawn with equal material, but with this pawn on d3, blocking. And, if after trade, then it would be the queen blocking. So these pieces are not really coming into the game. Rook e8 is played, rook a d8 is played, and I mean, white's position is a disaster. So I took instead dc2, which was not good. I mean, just to allow the pieces out, it was not very good, but it still keeps the advantage, obviously, with the bishop pair. So queen e4, a5, d4, rook e8, knight e5, and yeah, I mean, this is of course, just again, just an example, like it's not important for the line, but for the king's gambit, it's quite interesting. So I played here f6, which is a bad move, going after the material when it was absolutely not necessary. I had a very nice move available, bishop to f5. So basically white has to take it. I mean, if you don't take, then knight c2 is unpleasant, so you take. And after queen takes d4, king h1, rook takes, the position is really, really good for black, pretty much winning, since white cannot finish development. So engine comes up with this way of sacrificing the queen and playing knight e2, but in this case, it's still the same issue. Those pieces are not playing, the knight has to move. The rook enters, and black most likely is winning the game. So instead I went after the material. He found very great move, knight h5, fe, bishop h6. Very nice attacking, finally. Like, if I allow King's Gambit players to play like this, it's dangerous. So now there are many threats, and bishop h6, knight f6, otherwise he takes on g7. I mean, I still took, he went knight f6, and I had to sacrifice my queen. It was very complicated, 3 pieces for the queen. I won this game at the end, but anything could have happened. All right, so these are my games against pretty high level, I mean, extremely high level opposition, I would rather say. So now I brought 3 positions just to illustrate some. Oh, there is one more game, sorry. I forgot about it. But okay, in this one my opponent again allowed bishop h4 early, so it's not that important. So yeah, there is this fun position here. White's like the material is equal, but black's knight is on e3. And there is a variation like here, like c3. So yeah, if you would like to guess the move, please stop the video for a minute, or maybe 2, because it's really not easy. But anyway, even if you don't find, it's fine. It's just, you know, how the King's Gambit is played. So now the knight is under attack because the pin is broken on the king. Obviously, there are many squares to retreat and go away with the knight, but it shouldn't be black's first intention. So there is very strong move, bishop f5 in this position. Just leaving the knight there and just finishing development and saying that, okay, if you take the knight, then after d takes c3, there are big problems, and it's indeed the case. So the knight is hanging, and also this cover check is in the air, so eventually white is losing very quickly. It is I am not sure, so it's either a clickable variation from the course, or it's only in the video. Probably only in the video version, where there are many lines like this to, you know, to explain a little bit more detail. But it's a position which is coming from the course, yes. So it is not good to take. White can play knight c5, and now again knight is hanging here, the pawn is hanging here, but it doesn't matter. Black again makes a move, just continuing to develop with the queen, attacking the knight. Knight takes on b7, and again a lot of things are hanging. It's time to sacrifice. Knight takes g2, queen takes g2, and knight takes e5. So basically black is down a piece, one more piece is hanging on a5, but the main thing is that the king is very weak, and even though it can castle after bishop f6, it's still a horribly dangerous position for white. And why is that? Because, I mean, obviously this knight, it cannot be used for too many things. It's most likely to get trapped, and these pieces are very much behind in development, and yeah, the king will be also a problem. It's okay, it's not an easy line, it's rather just to show that what can happen if you know, black is sacrificing like this. In this position, white went to bishop to b3. And again, if you would like to solve it, you can stop it for 1 moment. I mean, not, yeah, rather for 1 minute or 2. So black is up in exchange, but the knight on h1 is pretty much trapped, like it cannot really be protected. So again, the key thing here is to get some sort of an attack against that king in the middle. There are some nice candidate moves like queen e7, knight d7. Both look quite tempting, but both have the same problem. So if queen e7, then d4. White has time for this move just to protect, and the knight is still not possible to save. And of course now black would try like c5, but then the knight is jumping and it's getting very messy. And the same thing for knight d7. It's d4. It's a little bit difficult to continue in this position. So basically, in an ideal world, the knight would like to take on e5, of course, to use the pin on f3, but this d4 is super annoying. So basically, black is using both the queen and the knight, but from a different square, queen d4. So because of the pin, d4 is stopped, and once white is capturing the knight, black plays knight d7. And now this threat of knight e5 is very strong. I mean, it's going to be played in the next move pretty much against everything. And black can also castle long. And the good old problem of pieces out of the game are hurting white a lot. Also, I can circle the bishop here because it's very far from defending the king. Okay, and okay, last position you don't have to find anything because it's really just just shows that when opponent's king is weak, then it's possible to sacrifice a lot of material. There are many ways to be better for black after the move of d5, but I believe the move of long castle is quite instructive, just to put the king into safety. And after d takes, queen takes e6. White can even take one more piece, but after knight f5, it's quite painful because the queen is under attack, the rook is under attack. Okay, if the queen moves, the knight can get into trouble. So for the moment, black is down 2 pieces, but you also have to count these pieces, which is actually 3 pieces did not move at all for white, which can seriously reduce chances for a successful defense. All right, so thank you very much for either participating in the classroom or watching this YouTube video or watching this video later on YouTube. If you have any questions, comments, just let me know, whether YouTube or here on Chessable, and see you soon for some other video, and either today or on Sunday. So thank you very much and see you.